Which one have you eaten? 10 minutes later, that same predator would back away from him like it had found the only adult in the room. That was the first moment the laughter died in Room 9 of the Varric Interstellar Survival Academy. Not faded, not softened, died. 1 second. Instructor Raxer Van had the entire room shaking with amusement. All 4 rows of cadets clicking, hissing, and chattering at the idea that a human from Earth could understand apex predators. The next second, every throat in the room forgot how sound worked. I was there. 3rd row, left side, close enough to see the instructor's smile lock in place like a broken display screen. Close enough to see Caleb Brooks standing beside the predator ranking board with his hands in the pockets of his gray training jacket, looking less like a dangerous organism and more like a guy who had wandered into the wrong community college lecture. He was 6 feet tall by human measurements, maybe a little over, pale-skinned, brown-haired, with the calm, tired eyes of someone who had seen too many airports and not enough coffee. No claws, no fangs, no armor plates, no venom sacs, nothing that should have made a room full of trained alien cadets nervous. And yet, after that question, I noticed something I should have noticed earlier. Caleb was not looking at the predator board like a student. He was looking at it like a menu with bad pictures. The board showed the deadliest creatures cataloged by the Galactic Safety Council, all of them rendered in bright, terrifying holograms. The red maw from Kelthar 9, a 6-legged ambush hunter with a roar that could rattle windows from half a mile away. The glassback stalker from Viral, nearly invisible when it moved under moonlight. The thorn-crowned grazer, which sounded harmless until you learned it could flip an armored transport like a cheap lawn chair. We had spent 20 minutes discussing avoidance zones, emergency shelters, pheromone alarms, sonic fences, and all the expensive ways civilized species protected themselves from nature when nature got rude. Then Raxer, in his infinite arrogance, pointed one claw at Caleb and said, "Perhaps the Earth creature can. Tell us how his people survive predators. Do you hide in trees? Make loud noises? Sacrifice the slowest member of the herd?" The room loved that. Even I laughed, and I wish I could say I did not, but fear makes honesty useful. Caleb did not laugh. He stepped closer to the board, studied the rotating images, tilted his head slightly, and asked the question that turned our lecture into a warning label. "Which one have you eaten?" At first, I thought the translator had failed. So did everyone else. Raxer blinked twice, his crest lifting in confusion. "Excuse me." Caleb nodded toward the board. Not smug, not angry, just curious, like he was asking about barbecue at a county fair. "You said apex predators. I'm asking which ones your species eats." No one moved. The red maw hologram kept rotating behind him, teeth flashing in artificial light. And for the first time that morning, it looked less like a monster and more like something that had not yet met the right human. The worst part was that none of this should have surprised us, because 12 minutes before Caleb Brooks ever stepped beside that ranking board, the Academy Safety Officer had entered Room 9 with a face so serious it made even Raxer stop sharpening his lecture claws against the podium. Her name was Officer Thalen, a tall blue-skinned administrator with silver eyes, a permanent frown, and the exhausted posture of someone who had spent her entire career telling arrogant young predators not to put their hands into obvious traps. She carried a red folder. Not orange, not yellow, red. At Varric Interstellar Survival Academy, a red folder meant the insurance department had already started sweating. She placed it on the instructor's desk and said, very clearly, "Before today's survival demonstration begins, all cadets and faculty will acknowledge special handling rules for the human exchange student." That was when the room started making little sounds. Not full laughter yet. Little clicks. Little snorts. The kind of noise students make when an adult says something too ridiculous to respect. Raxer looked down at the folder, then at the safety officer, then toward the empty seat marked for Caleb. "Special handling," he repeated, letting the words drag through the air like something rotten. For one mammal from a low-technology border planet. Officer Thalen did not blink. For one Death World mammal from Earth. That made the room quieter, but not for the right reason. We had all heard the term Death World before. Every academy used it to scare first-year cadets. Planets with unstable weather. Aggressive bacteria. High gravity. Too much oxygen. Too many things with teeth. Earth had all of that, according to the file, but files could exaggerate. Files were written by committees. Committees were afraid of everything. Raxer opened the folder and began reading aloud in the tone of a man performing comedy. Do not initiate unnecessary physical contact. Do not challenge the human's survival claims. Do not compare Earth predators to domesticated pests. Do not attempt dominance testing without medical staff present. He paused there and smiled. Medical staff present. How thoughtful. The class finally laughed. I laughed too, because the idea of Raxer Vin needing protection from a human sounded like a joke written by someone who had never met Raxer Vin. He was 7 feet tall, covered in dark bronze scale plates, and carried himself like the universe had personally voted him most likely to win. He had trained on Hunter Moons, survived 3 sanctioned wilderness trials, and once made a bone mauler retreat using nothing but posture and a warning growl. He loved telling that story. He was probably preparing to tell it again when Officer Thalen leaned forward and said, "Instructor, this is not a suggestion." Raxer's smile thinned. Then what is it? A boundary. That word changed the temperature in the room. Predatory species hate boundaries when they are not the ones setting them. Raxer closed the red folder with one slow hand and pushed it back across the desk. "Officer, my classroom teaches survival through direct experience. If the human cannot tolerate questions, pressure, or challenge, then perhaps Earth should have sent someone less fragile." Officer Thalen stared at him for 3 long seconds. Then she said the sentence I would remember later with absolute regret. "Instructor Vin, Earth did not send someone fragile. Earth sent someone controlled." The door opened exactly 8 seconds after Officer Thalen said the word controlled, which made the timing feel less like coincidence and more like the universe clearing its throat. Caleb Brooks stepped into room 9, carrying 1 black shoulder bag, 1 paper coffee cup, and absolutely none of the fear everyone had been waiting to smell. That was the first disappointment. Most new exchange cadets entered Varick Academy like they were walking into a storm shelter during a tornado warning. They checked the exits. They stared at the ceiling vents. They asked whether the floor plates were supposed to hum. Caleb just walked in like a man arriving late to a Monday morning safety seminar. He wore a gray training jacket, dark cargo pants, and worn black boots with actual dirt still caught in the grooves. Earth dirt, I realized later. Not polished station dust. Not synthetic soil from a decorative garden dome. Real dirt from a planet that made weather personal. He was about 6 feet tall, broad in the shoulders by human standards, but not impressive by ours. Raxer was still a full foot taller. The Varadi cadets in the back had forearms thicker than Caleb's neck. Even I, and my species is considered medium frame, could see why the room relaxed the moment he appeared. He looked sturdy, yes, but not terrifying. Pale skin, short brown hair, clean jaw, gray eyes that moved slowly across the room, not darting, not searching, just noticing. That bothered me a little. Predators scan. Prey panic. Caleb didn't either. He observed like the room had already explained itself, and he was only checking the spelling. Officer Thalen turned toward him. "Cadet Brooks, you are on time." Caleb lifted the coffee cup slightly. Had to find the machine that makes the least dangerous coffee. A few cadets laughed at that. Human humor, we assumed. Soft. Self-deprecating. Harmless. Raxer folded his arms and gave him the kind of smile instructors use when they have already decided a student will become an example. "Cadet Brooks, welcome to Advanced Comparative Survival Behavior. Do humans usually bring beverages into predator lectures?" Caleb looked at the cup, then back at him. "Only when we want to stay awake for the part where someone underestimates us." The room made that little sound again, halfway between amusement and offense. Raxer's crest rose. Mine flattened. I do not know why. Caleb had not raised his voice. He had not moved closer. He had not shown his teeth. Yet the air around him had changed by 1 invisible degree, like standing near a campfire before realizing the forest behind you is dry. He took the empty seat at the front, placed his bag under the desk, and sat with his back straight but relaxed. No armor. No claws. No defensive posture. Nothing. That was what made it worse. Every dangerous species I knew performed danger. Caleb Brooks did not perform anything. He simply existed, calm and awake, while every survival instinct in the room tried to decide whether it had just missed something important. Raxer waited until Caleb was seated before he dimmed the classroom lights, and the predator ranking board awakened across the front wall like a nightmare, trying to look educational. 300 holographic panels unfolded in the air, each one showing a creature that some committee had agreed was too dangerous to meet without a rescue plan, a sealed bunker, and a very good reason. The cadets leaned forward. This was the part of the lesson everyone liked. It made us feel civilized. We could stare at terror from comfortable chairs and pretend that naming a thing meant mastering it. Raxer stepped into the blue glow with his hands behind his back, his bronze scales catching the light. Today we compare apex survival behaviors across hostile environments, he said. Remember, an apex predator is not merely large. Size impresses tourists. Efficiency creates fear. The first hologram expanded until it stood nearly 10 feet tall, a red-backed creature from Kelthar 9 with a wide head, heavy shoulders, and eyes placed low for ambush. The room went respectfully quiet. Even on display, it had presence. The board listed standard guidance beside it. Avoid open ground. Avoid dusk movement. Avoid carrying meat. Avoid eye contact longer than 2 seconds. Raxer smiled. The red maw. Fast over short distance. Patient over long distance. It can wait in silence for 14 hours if the meal is worth the effort. A nervous ripple moved through the class. Caleb looked up from his coffee. He did not look impressed. He looked like a man trying to decide whether the presentation remote needed new batteries. Raxer noticed. Of course he noticed. Instructors like Raxer could detect disrespect the way sharks detect blood in water, or at least that is how he would have described it. He swiped one claw through the display, and another creature appeared, long and pale, with legs like folded wire. Glassback stalker, nearly invisible in low light. Hunts by reflected heat. Standard response is stillness, breath control, and emergency beacon activation. The cadet beside me whispered a prayer under his breath. Caleb took a slow drink of coffee. Raxer's jaw tightened. He brought up the thorn-crowned grazer next, which looked harmless until the scale marker showed it could stand 12 feet at the shoulder and weigh more than a delivery truck. Then came the lake choir serpent, whose hunting call could confuse most nervous systems. Then the black ridge charger, which had once forced an entire mining colony indoors for 6 straight weeks. Each creature arrived with warnings, classifications, range maps, survival odds, and small red icons that meant do not attempt field contact under any circumstances. Then Raxer reached the Earth file. The board hesitated. That was the first strange thing. It did not load one image. It loaded 27. Wolf, bear, lion, tiger, shark, crocodile, eagle, snake. Something called a hippo that looked round enough to be funny until the danger rating appeared and several cadets stopped smiling. The file kept scrolling. Venomous, pack-based, ambush-capable, pursuit-adapted, territorial, aquatic, arboreal. No single dominant predator model. No universal avoidance rule. No safe biome classification. Caleb finally leaned forward. Not much. Just an inch. His eyes changed then, not with fear, but with recognition. Raxer saw it and mistook it for weakness. Apparently, he said, turning to the class, Earth could not even produce a proper apex category. Just a messy collection of regional threats. Caleb set his coffee down very gently. The sound was small. Somehow everyone heard it. Raxer should have stopped when the room went quiet, but pride has a way of mistaking silence for permission. He walked closer to the Earth file and flicked one claw through the scrolling images as though he were sorting through cheap toys at a discount store. Look at this, he said, enlarging the picture of a wolf until it stood waist-high beside him in blue light. Pack hunter. Social strategy. Moderate bite pressure. Dangerous to unattended livestock and nervous children. A few cadets laughed. Not loudly at first. They were testing the air, checking whether Officer Thalen would object. She stood near the door with both hands folded behind her back, face unreadable, which Raxer took as victory. He made the wolf smaller and pulled up the bear. Large mammal. Slow compared with real pursuit hunters. Impressive claws, poor endurance profile, limited tactical creativity. More laughter. Caleb did not move. He sat with one forearm resting on the desk, fingers loose near the coffee cup, eyes on the display rather than on Raxer. That seemed to irritate the instructor more than any insult could have. He wanted flinching. He wanted embarrassment. He wanted the human to defend Earth like a young cadet defending a favorite sports team. Caleb gave him nothing. So Raxer went bigger. He brought up the shark, then the crocodile, then the lion, presenting each one with the same smug rhythm. Aquatic ambush organism. Avoid water. Problem solved. Low-slung reptilian predator. Avoid shoreline. Problem solved. Group-based feline hunter. Avoid tall grass. Problem solved. By then the class was fully laughing, because simple answers make young minds feel powerful. I remember one cadet behind me whispering, "How did humans even survive recess?" Another replied, "Maybe the predators felt sorry for them." That got a fresh wave of amusement. Caleb's mouth twitched, but not into a smile. It was smaller than that. Almost tired. Raxer saw it and pointed at him. "Is something amusing, Cadet Brooks?" Caleb looked up. "Not exactly." "Then please educate us. Which of these regional inconveniences represents Earth's supreme terror?" Raxer gestured to the wall. "The furry pack animal? The oversized river lizard? The striped ambusher with decorative coloring?" A cadet named Velik, who had been trying to win Raxer's approval all semester, reached into the demonstration bin beside his seat and pulled out a small training model of an Earth predator. It was a plastic tiger, orange and black, maybe 6 inches long, designed for scale comparison. Velik tossed it gently across the floor so it slid to a stop near Caleb's boots. "Careful," he called. "It might chase your shoelaces." The room broke open. Even Raxer laughed then, deep and satisfied, certain the lesson had become exactly what he wanted. Human pride, reduced to a toy on the floor. Caleb looked down at the little tiger. He did not pick it up immediately. He studied it for a long moment, and something about his stillness made my laughter catch in my throat. It was not anger. Anger is easy to recognize. This was memory. Caleb leaned forward, picked up the model with surprising care, and turned it over in his hand as if checking whether the stripes were accurate. "That one," Raxer said, still smiling. "Does your species fear that one?" Caleb rubbed a thumb along the tiny painted back. "Some do. And you?" Caleb finally looked at him. "I grew up in Montana. We had mountain lions near the ranch, bears in the tree line, rattlesnakes under warm rocks, and coyotes that tested the fences at night." The translator delivered the words smoothly, but the room did not know what to do with them. Those were not mythic names. They sounded ordinary, local, normal. That was the problem. Raxer's smile faltered for half a second, then returned sharper than before. "So your childhood was spent avoiding pests." Caleb set the model tiger on the desk, facing the instructor. "No," he said softly. "Learning boundaries." For 3 seconds, nobody understood what Caleb meant by boundaries. We understood territory, dominance, threat displays, ranked aggression, and all the neat academic boxes that made survival feel like a chart. Boundaries sounded too polite, too human, too soft. Raxer tilted his head, letting the word hang there while the tiger model sat on Caleb's desk, pointed toward him like a tiny orange witness. "Boundaries," he repeated. "That is what your species learned from predators." Caleb nodded once. "Among other things." "Such as?" Raxer asked, and now his voice had that dangerous classroom sweetness instructors use before humiliating a student in public. Caleb leaned back, not far, just enough to look comfortable. "Do not run unless running helps. Do not stare unless you mean it. Do not corner something that wants space. Do not mistake quiet for safe. Do not assume teeth are the only thing that matters." The room did not laugh this time. It wanted to. I could feel the pressure of it, that nervous need to turn discomfort into noise. But Caleb's delivery ruined the joke. He sounded like he was reciting rules someone had taught him before he was old enough to question them. Raxer's crest lowered. "Those are avoidance principles. Prey principles." Caleb's eyes moved from the tiger model to the predator board, then back to the instructor. "Sometimes." That single word bothered Raxer more than a direct insult would have. "Sometimes," he said. "And the rest of the time?" Caleb picked up the model again and balanced it in his palm. "The rest of the time, you learn what can be scared off, what can be outweighted, what can be outsmarted, and what should never be allowed to get close to your family." Officer Thalen shifted near the door. It was barely movement, but I saw it. She looked like someone watching a warning sign get ignored in real time. Raxer saw only challenge. "You speak as if humans negotiated with these creatures." Caleb gave a small shrug. "Some of them. We also tracked them, studied them, protected them, fenced them out, brought them into stories, put them on flags, named sports teams after them, and yes, sometimes ate them." The translator did its job perfectly. That was the terrible part. There was no error to blame. The sentence landed clean in every language channel in the room. Velik's mandibles opened, then closed. A Varadi cadet made a low, confused sound. Raxer stared as if Caleb had just claimed humans used lightning as table decoration. You consumed apex predators, he said slowly. Caleb looked genuinely puzzled by the reaction. You do not. The silence that followed was different from the earlier kind. Earlier, we had been amused and uncertain. Now we were recalculating. Raxer's jaw tightened, and I could see him trying to decide whether this was arrogance, madness, or some primitive human prank. He stepped closer to Caleb's desk, looming over him with every inch of his 7-foot frame. Name one, he said. Caleb did not look up at first. He turned the little tiger model so it faced the holographic board again. Alligator, he said. Tastes a little like chicken if you fry it right. Somewhere in the back row, a chair scraped against the floor. Raxer's smile disappeared completely. Caleb finally raised his eyes. Now I am curious, instructor. On your world, when something is called apex, does that mean nobody ever figured out how to cook it? Raxer did not answer Caleb's question, which was the first intelligent decision he made all morning. Unfortunately, it lasted less than 2 seconds. His crest rose, his shoulders widened, and the whole front of the classroom seemed to shrink around him as he stepped away from the desk and pointed toward the padded demonstration circle in the center of the room. Stand, he said. One word, heavy enough to make half the class sit straighter. Officer Thalen moved immediately. Instructor Van, I strongly advise against physical evaluation without formal clearance. Raxer did not look at her. This is not an evaluation. This is instruction. Caleb remained seated for a moment, the little tiger model still resting beside his coffee cup. He looked at Officer Thalen, not for permission exactly, but for information. She gave the smallest shake of her head. Caleb sighed, and somehow that made the room more nervous than if he had smiled. He stood slowly, zipped his gray training jacket halfway, and walked into the circle like a man heading to the mailbox in bad weather. No stretching, no dramatic breathing, no cracking joints. That bothered Raxer. You could see it in the way his claws flexed against his palms. Predators respect rituals before conflict. The stare, the warning, the display. Caleb skipped all of it. He just stopped 10 feet away and put his hands at his sides. Rules, he asked. Raxer laughed once, short and sharp. Survive the first movement. The cadets leaned forward. That was Raxer's favorite opening phrase. He used it when teaching reflex theory, and normally it meant the student would be embarrassed in a controlled, medically boring way. He was fast. Not classroom fast. Real fast. The kind of fast that made your brain understand the movement after your body had already reacted. He dropped low, crossed the space, and reached for Caleb's shoulder in a predator control grip designed to turn balance into surrender. At least, that was the theory. Caleb moved half an inch. I know because I watched his boots. Half an inch to the right. A small turn of the hip, one hand rising not to strike, but to guide. Raxer's momentum kept going exactly where Caleb invited it. His own weight carried him past the target. His feet lost their confident pattern, and Caleb placed one calm palm between Raxer's shoulder plates, as if helping a drunk uncle avoid a coffee table. The instructor landed on the mat with a sound that was not painful, not dramatic, but deeply, socially catastrophic. The room froze. Caleb stepped back immediately. Hands open, breathing normal. You were overcommit, he said, as if offering helpful advice during a gym class. Raxer rolled to one knee, more stunned than hurt, and the look on his face did something strange to every cadet watching. It removed certainty. Not fear yet. Fear would come later. This was worse for pride. This was arithmetic changing on the board after everyone had already written down the answer. Raxer stood, slower this time. Again, he said. Caleb glanced toward Officer Thalen. She looked like she wanted to resign from the entire galaxy. Instructor, she warned. Raxer ignored her and came in harder, switching angles, using a feint with his upper hands and a sweeping step meant to trap Caleb's legs. It was a beautiful technique. I had practiced it for 6 months and still looked like falling furniture when I tried. Caleb watched it arrive with the mild disappointment of a man recognizing a familiar mistake. He did not overpower Raxer. That would have made sense to us. He did something much worse. He understood him. One step back, one turn, one controlled grip at the wrist, and Raxur's perfect technique folded into a harmless kneel. Caleb released him before the academy alarms could decide whether anything serious had happened. "Better," Caleb said softly. "But you are still hunting like nothing hunts back." Raxur stayed on one knee for one breath too long, and that was when pride stopped being embarrassing and became dangerous. His eyes moved from Caleb to the class, then to Officer Thalen, then back to the smooth black control panel built into the instructor podium. I saw the decision happen before I understood it. So did Officer Thalen. "Do not," she said, and for the first time that morning her voice cracked through the room like an alarm. Raxur stood, brushing invisible dust from his training vest as if the mat had offended him. "Since Cadet Brooks believes Earth has educated him beyond formal survival doctrine," he said, "we will provide him with a more accurate comparison." Caleb's expression changed by almost nothing. His shoulders relaxed a fraction. His feet shifted, not backward, not forward, just into balance. That was when I realized he had been polite before. Now he was preparing. Raxur placed his palm over the control panel. A red light answered. The classroom wall behind the ranking board split open, and the sound that came from inside was low enough to make the floor hum through my boots. Every cadet in room 9 knew that sound, not because we had heard it in person, but because Academy survival videos used it in the first week to make students stop joking during emergency briefings. The containment chamber was not part of normal lectures. It was a restricted demonstration unit, shielded, reinforced, and officially listed as faculty access only. Inside it stood a red maw juvenile, which was Academy language for small enough not to violate 3 station laws at once. It was still nearly 8 feet from nose to tail, with heavy shoulders, dark red hide, and a head built like nature had filed a complaint against kindness. The class moved back as one body. Chairs scraped. Breathing changed. Someone whispered for the emergency barrier. Officer Thalen slapped her own override device, but the panel flashed amber. Raxur had locked the room into active demonstration mode. "Instructor Van," she said, very slowly, "you are crossing a line." Raxur did not look away from Caleb. "The line is exactly what we are teaching." The containment gate lifted 3 inches, then 6. The red maw lowered its head and tasted the air. Its eyes moved across the room, passing over the cadets, the lights, the hologram, the instructor, and then stopping on Caleb. That was the second time the room went silent for the wrong reason. The creature did not roar. It did not charge. It froze. Not like prey. Not like a machine waiting for input. It froze like something ancient inside its body had recognized a shape from a story its species had never been told. Caleb looked at it, then at Raxur. "Close the gate." Raxur's mouth tightened. "Afraid." Caleb shook his head once. "Responsible." The word landed harder than any challenge. Raxur pressed the panel again. The gate rose fully. The red maw stepped out, claws clicking on the training floor, muscles rolling under its hide with slow, careful power. It should have looked like the lessons monster. It should have owned the room. Instead, it circled Caleb at a distance, uncertain, head low, nostrils widening. Caleb turned with it, not fast, not dramatic, keeping his hands visible and his voice calm. "Easy," he said. "One human word. Soft as a porch light." The red maw stopped. Raxur's crest flattened. "That is impossible," he whispered. Caleb did not take his eyes off the creature. "No," he said. "That is boundaries." Then Velik, nervous and stupid, kicked his chair by accident. The red maw snapped its attention toward the sound, startled, ready to bolt or lunge, and the entire class panicked without moving. Caleb stepped between the creature and the students. No roar, no speech, just one step. The red maw looked at him, and somehow, unbelievably, it backed away. The red maw backing away should have ended the lesson, but Raxur Vin had already lost the room, and some creatures would rather make a disaster larger than admit they caused it. He moved toward the control panel again, one hand shaking with anger. He clearly wanted to call discipline. Officer Thalen crossed the floor fast enough that her boots struck sparks from the training surface. "Deactivate the demonstration," she ordered. Raxur ignored her. His eyes stayed fixed on Caleb, not on the predator, and that told me everything. This was no longer about survival. It was about pride trying to climb back onto a throne. Caleb saw it too. He kept himself between the red maw and the students, shoulders low, hands open, voice calm. "Instructor, stop touching the controls." Raxer laughed without humor. You do not give commands in my classroom. Caleb did not look away from the creature. I am not commanding you. I am giving you a chance to be smart. The room went so still I could hear the ventilation system whispering above us. Raxer pressed the panel. A sharp training tone pulsed through the speakers, the kind used to trigger pursuit behavior during controlled simulations. The red maw flinched. Its body lowered, not with confidence, but with confusion, trapped between fear and instinct. Every cadet behind Caleb pulled back another step. I wanted to run, but my legs had become decorations. Caleb exhaled once, slow and steady, the way humans do when they are about to lift something heavy or hear bad news. Then he made a sound, not a shout, not a roar like the Academy videos taught us to fear. It was lower, rougher, a short command carried from somewhere deep in his chest. The red maw stopped moving. Its head swung toward him. Caleb took one step forward. The creature took one step back. That was when the entire Academy ranking system broke inside my mind. Raxer had called this thing an apex predator. The board had called it a restricted hazard. The safety manual had devoted 43 pages to avoiding it. Caleb Brooks treated it like a loose ranch animal that had wandered too close to a fence. He reached slowly to his own jacket pocket, pulled out a silver emergency heat tab from the survival kit on his belt, and tossed it toward the open containment chamber. It clicked across the floor, warmed instantly, and released a smell like cooked protein and salt. The red maw's attention shifted. Caleb pointed once toward the chamber. Go on. I swear to every star above us. The creature listened. It walked backward at first, watching Caleb the entire time, then turned and followed the scent inside. Officer Thalen slammed her override device against the panel, and the containment gate dropped with a clean metallic seal. Only then did Caleb turn toward Raxer. He did not smile. That was important. A cruel person would have smiled. A proud person would have bowed. Caleb only looked tired. You risked your students to prove a point you did not understand, he said. Raxer opened his mouth, but no sound came out. For the first time since I had known him, he looked smaller than his own shadow. Officer Thalen removed his instructor clearance with one swipe of her badge. The red lights faded. The classroom returned to normal, except nothing was normal anymore. The predator board still showed Earth's animals, wolves and bears and sharks and crocodiles rotating in quiet blue light. Before that day, I had thought humans survived because Earth had failed to finish the job. After that day, I understood the truth. Earth had not failed. Earth had trained them. It had surrounded them with teeth, storms, hunger, cold, heat, and darkness, then waited to see what would stand up in the morning. Caleb Brooks picked up his coffee, noticed it had gone cold, and made the most human face imaginable, mild disappointment. Then he walked back to his desk like he had done nothing special. But nobody laughed when he sat down. Nobody called Earth messy again. And when the Academy updated the survival manual that night, the red maw kept its warning label, but humans received a new one. Do not provoke. Do not corner. Do not mistake calm for weakness. And above all, never assume an apex predator is the most dangerous thing in the room when a human is standing quietly nearby.